What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Nehemiah, aka Neo, and today we're gonna be talking about the Phoenix Suns. I had this video recorded last night, but the audio wasn't working well, so I'm just gonna re-record it. And I think it's gonna be better that I could re-record it because I could probably just sharpen it up a little bit. But first off, let's talk about the Phoenix Suns. I think that Funky Diabetic did post a video about this yesterday, but I definitely wanted to elaborate on a little bit what he kind of was talking about. When we look at the Phoenix Suns, we are looking at a roster where they give up a lot of points in the playoffs. Not only that, but they're really main two, Devin Booker and Chris Paul, kind of get stifled in some of these series. We see it with the Milwaukee Bucks, and we're gonna see it with the Dallas Mavericks. Well, we're gonna see it with the Milwaukee Bucks, but we already know what the Dallas Mavericks did, so I'm not really planning on talking about that. But right now, I'm just gonna pull up the stats for their last two postseasons, and I just wanted to talk about what this team could need. Shout out to Bright Side of the Sun because I'm gonna talk about some of the trades that they should make, and just overall the type of roster that they should kind of look for going forward. So right now, I'm pulling up their advanced stats to show how their defense has fallen off overall for the last 2 years. So, playoffs, look at their. Ooh, wait. Hold on. This is the regular one. So, look, we're at the playoffs, right? So, looking at their defensive rating in the regular season, it is 6.8. That's really good. Their offense is also really solid. Now, looking in the playoffs, not that. It's not that. So they actually did improve a little bit on the offensive end while also really regressing on the defensive end. Now, that could be for a multitude of reasons. Looking at it, they may get out rebounded, I'm pretty sure. They're a really small team, and I think that's going to be a really big factor as to why, yeah, they're getting out rebounded a lot. I'm pretty sure they're still making a lot of tough shots, though. Where are they? They're right here. Let me just tag them. So, yeah, they're still efficient. They're literally just giving up more points, giving up more rebounds, and I think that their assist to turnover ratio is still not the best when it was in the regular season. Let me just make sure that. Yeah, it's a little bit lower, but it's still really good. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's still really good, but it's still mostly just the turnover percentage and their defense. So, I do want to talk. I do want to talk about a couple of players that they could get that could really improve that. But there's also one other aspect that we want to talk about, and that's when it comes to this quarter of the game five kind of solidifies how they lost the series, and that's because after the first game they were never able to get Devin Booker and Chris Paul to go, and there's gonna be a main reason for that. As we're gonna see with a lot of these clips, we're gonna see how Devin Booker is gonna have to create a lot for the rest of the team and himself while he's doing a lot of difficult shot creation, and that's mainly because a guy like Chris Paul is not able to be effective when he has a guy like Drew Holiday on him, and vice versa. Even Chris Paul has to do a lot more of the heavy load when a guy like Drew Holiday is on him at all times. But yeah, but look at it right here. A guy like Chris Paul is already up on Devin Booker, or not Devin Booker, Chris Paul. Drew Holiday is just hounding him. He's not going to get a good shot off of here because now he's meeting Brook Lopez at the top of the key, and he's kind of have to settle for rather a layup over this guy or a mid-range shot where he can heavily contest, and I'm pretty sure he goes for the mid-range where Drew was able to catch up. And keep in mind, he's just not getting into rhythm, so they're just going to force feed Devin Booker at that point. Now we see Chris Paul is just not effective in this play at all, something that Monte Williams does not want. And keep in mind, look at the scoreboard and look at the shot clock. The scoreboard is really close, and look at the shot clock on this play. The ball goes away at the 5-minute mark, or the 5-second mark. While he didn't make the shot, it still wasn't the best possession because, one, they're relying on ISO ball, and two, they are not getting the best shot off from the whole squad. A guy like Chris Paul, their best player one of their best players in this playoffs, he wasn't getting the ball at all. So it's a really troublesome thing. And we're just gonna see it from now on, where Devin Booker is literally creating everything out of thin air. He got 40 points in this game. Don't get me wrong, but if these are the shots that they're gonna get, then there's gonna be a reason why this team just doesn't really succeed in the future. They just have too much pressure on Devin Booker and Chris Paul just to create all these shots for everyone else. And once one of them is just rendered useless, we're gonna see how they just don't get the best shots off, even for the rest of the team. Keep in mind, the only players who have touched the ball to bring it up have been Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and that's it. Everyone else just got assisted on. But keep in mind, now we see a switch. Devin Booker is now being guarded by Devin Booker is now being guarded by Drew Holiday, and now we're starting to get a little bit of gap with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns. And even though Chris Paul is still just not, or even though he's still having the ball without Drew Holiday being hounded on him, we're still seeing a Chris Paul who's just not getting the best foot forward. And he's starting to become cold because he just hasn't had the rhythm that other players are going for or going towards. But look at it right now. They're starting to go into motion, but it's already starting to become too late. And that's when the switch comes in, where Drew Holiday is now guarding the primary attacker. And he makes a shot. But keep in mind, this is his first shot in the whole second half. It's almost been 7 minutes. And they're down by 10 at this point. And looking at how the whole game has switched, it's just not really good for the momentum of this whole team. I think we're done with watching that game. Also, I'm probably going to get striked for that, so like this shit up. So, now that we kind of understood a couple of things that this roster needs, we have to talk about how they're going to need to trade. I think that their best situation was having Aiden leave, but they would have to have hounded the Jazz for them to get Rudy Gobert. However, of course, that's not how the thing went down. So now we're looking at a roster where they're kind of stagnating, but they still have to make a trade, which is kind of a troublesome thought. So now we have a couple of players that we could really just look at and say, oh, okay, well, these guys are what they want. Or yeah, these guys are what they would like. So we have logical trade candidates, and shout out Bright Side of the Sun again, because some of these I wasn't even thinking about, but I do think that this is probably the perfect list. So I think that Pascal Siakam probably does bring a defensive edge that they really do need. I don't even think he needs to really be that much of a shot creator, but I would say that he's definitely a top 20. Well, let me not say definitely. I would say he's a top 25 player, and he would really just bring this whole to the Phoenix Suns roster. Now, that being said, it really depends on how good Toronto will be next year. I think that if they're still a top 8, top 7-ish seed, they're probably not going to give up Pascal yet. But given how they may look at Scotty Barnes in the future, there's a good chance that they just want to go with a more younger route. So, yeah, I don't really expect Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to be traded, so let's ignore that. But my biggest targets are Bojan Bogdanovic and Harrison Barnes and PJ Washington. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure PJ actually did sign a contract extension. I could be wrong, but I think that he's probably going to be done. But if not, I think that this is probably going to be the ideal 4 going forward, because I think that they've hit a ceiling with Jay Crowder being their target 4. Jay Crowder is probably just a replacement filler rather than he is a legitimate starting 4 at this point. He's a 6'6" person, and while he still is kind of big, he's still not the type of player that you want guarding a guy like AD. He's not a guy who's guarding maybe even a Giannis, another good forward. I'm kind of blanking out. Karl Anthony Towns, excuse me. So I think that once we start getting matched up with the top dogs, Jay Crowder is probably gonna have to kick the bucket for one of these guys. Now, I will say Harrison Barnes isn't necessarily a power forward, but I would still say that he does provide the scoring edge that this team really does need outside of these guys. Also, one more thing to note, Mikal Bridges could still develop into being a really good shot creator going down, but I'm not expecting that. But if it does happen, it happens. So I don't really mind that being a scenario. So yeah. Now looking at the other player that I mentioned, Bojan Bogdanovic, this is probably who they should go for. He's gonna give them that scoring edge that they need, and not only that, he's probably gonna massively improve that type of edge because he's probably gonna be open a lot, and that's gonna convert into a lot of 3-pointers because he's been shooting 40% at a really big clip, like 6 to 7 threes a game. So that's gonna be really good for them to see. Now, Julius Randle is probably the most ambitious one because one, we don't know how much it would take to trade for Julius Randle, and two, I don't know how good Julius Randle will be in this next season, but if he's anywhere close to the 2021 season, this team would be a top dog in the West, man. I would say that they're probably a top 3 team if Jalen or Julius Randle. I'm sorry, I've been thinking about Jalen's for a lot, but Julius Randle is at least anywhere near as good as he could be. He gives them a little playmaking edge, even maybe a little bit of shooting, scoring edge. And while he's not the best defender on this list by any means, he's still giving them what they need at the power forward position. Someone who's at least just a bigger body, someone who can maybe even keep up on the defensive end. Because honestly, Jay Crowder's just not doing it when we have a defense that's just falling off a cliff in the last 2 postseasons. Let's even look at this postseason. Their defense was almost 110. Like, come on. They, out of every team that advanced past the second round, they were probably the worst. In fact, there was no probable. They were definitely the worst because they actually, technically, it was the Clippers and the Atlanta Hawks. Dang, some of these teams gave up buckets. Oh my god. Oh my god. I didn't know that. But yeah, the Phoenix Suns were definitely just not the best defensive team. Even if we just look at the regular season, look at it. The Phoenix Suns, oh, they were still pretty bad defensively, actually. I didn't know that. Well, you learn some everything. I mean, you learn some every day. So, yeah, but I think I've been talking about it a lot. So, yeah, it's been Nehemiah, aka Neo, and I hope you guys are having a great one.